Corruption and Crimson are probably some of the creepiest shit in the entire game of Terraria. Now, there's a lot of pretty interesting, wacky, creepy things in Terraria, but I'd like to review both of these biomes specifically in their own way. They're both very distinctive, as you can tell by the purple or red trees that spawn during the world, and then they start to expand once you enter hard mode. Let's start with the Corruption. The Corruption was the original evil in the game, and it was at one point, there was no alternative. The Crimson came later on. It says on the wiki that it is a dark purple wasteland of death and decay, which has that theme. It reminds me of the Upside Down in Stranger Things. I know that came out later, but has that same feel to it of evilness and decay, and it looks rotting. I think that's a really interesting idea for a game, and the fact that it spreads like a cancer that's what makes it unnerving, because when you think of the Corruption, it is in its name. It is corrupted. There's a lot of weapons that you can get from the Corruption. Actually, there's not that many weapons, but if we start with from the Eater of Souls, there's the Tentacle Spike. Doesn't really look much like one. There's also the Vile Thorn that you can get from Shadow Orbs. Same with the Ball of Hurt, Band of Star Power, Shadow Orb item, not the, Shadow Orb. So you can get a Shadow Orb within a Shadow Orb, which is interesting. And a musket. Yeah, a musket. All these other things are themed the same thing, but there's just a musket that you can get. For the enemies, you had weird insectoid, pincher, earwig looking things, and then you got tapeworm looking things. They're called Devourer and Eater of Souls, and then you got the corrupt goldfish, the buff goldfish, He got food poisoned, and then he turned into what he is now. In hard mode, you got the Corruptor. It's very hard to tell. They look very similar to the Eater of Souls. You got the Corrupt Slime, the Slimeling from Corrupt Slime. So, it's like the mother slime. And you got the Shadow Slime. Essentially, it's the same thing. It has a slightly darker tint to it. And then you got the Slimer. And then there's the World Feeder. And there's Dark Mummy and Shadow Mummy on the 3DS. It's a very interesting idea to have. If you look at the Corruption, there are structures inside of it. If you guys are pro Terraria players, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I can't even tell you how many times I've died going down holes, I guess. But once you get down to the bottom, there's a bunch of things called demon altars. Sound pretty cool in their name, but you use that to craft a lot of the items. The suspicious looking eye, and if you're new to the game, what? This is just an eyeball. And then you're like, oh shit, yeah, no, this is not an eyeball. It's more than just an eyeball. There's also teeth that grow out of the ground as well with the Corruption. I find it interesting that they call the blocks Ebonstone block. I don't know where that word originates from, but it's certainly a strange choice of name for what they've chose for this. I just like the little details they put to it, especially when it moves into the other biome. It turns the ice purple once you get into the snow biome, or it'll turn the cactus into purpley teeth nails that are coming out of them. So I always thought that was an interesting design choice. I also think it's interesting that this freaking thorns, that I hate those, they do like no damage, but they make your character go like a bunch. Those are no fun, but I really like the design of the enemies, something you'd see in Stranger Things, especially with the many eyes and the almost alien look to them, because they had teeth like a lobster. That's pretty interesting, and they have arms that protrude out of them. So it's just, the Corruption is this creepy chasm, and it's also goes pretty straight lined underground, but drops vertically down. You fell to your death many times, and it is not fun, trust me. I hate it very much. Like I said, I really like how it looks, and I also like the background design. You can kind of see spikes that come out of the ground, noticing these little details. It's very spiky. It's very spiky. So the boss is pretty decent. The Eater of Worlds is one of the only worm bosses for some reason. Calamity Mod really likes worms a lot. I think they have 8 or 9 different of those bosses, but for the Eater of Worlds, it's just basically a big ass worm, and has pretty decent drops. Actually, it doesn't really drop that much. It only drops Demonite for the most part, Shadow Scale, Eater's Bone, and the trophy and the mask and healing potions, and that's about it. At least that's what it says on the wiki. once you get into the harder modes, it also drops the World Relic, which is its own thing, and Worm Scarf. So that's pretty interesting. That's about all I have to talk about with the corruption. Now moving on to the Crimson. The Crimson's probably my favorite of the two. I get that there's only two, but the Crimson has very interesting detail that separate itself very differently from the corruption. The Crimson has almost this more fleshy look to it that makes it look almost more alive in a sense. You're going into this live structure, especially there's teeth that exist and there's eyeballs in the ground. Instead of it dropping straight down, zigzags down, and there's teeth inside of the cave. Actually look at it on the map. It's a hand that protrudes in the ground, almost reaching towards the ground. And the trees have a very different look to them. They almost look they're made of skin or maybe muscles. They look fibrous because they drop down on their dripping blood or something like that. So that's an interesting idea. It says that the Crimson is an evil biome with a fleshy infection red gore theme in contrast to the dark purple wasteland theme of its counterpart. The blood crawler, the ticks almost, if you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you do. We all hate those little fuckers. Vicious goldfish instead of corrupted goldfish. There's the face monster. They look the SCP-096 because their face is so elongated. There's the Chimera, which is similar to the Corruptor, but instead its spikes are a lot smaller and it has only 2 of fangs instead of 4 of them. And then the Brain of Cthulhu boss, I personally like fighting more. Technically, there's not really much you can get from this boss either. It just drops the counterpart items, drops the Crimtane ore and the tissue sample, and then the bone rattle, and the mask, and the trophy, and lesser healing potions, and obviously the relic if you're in master mode. This boss surprisingly does not have that much health, but is still pretty damn hard. I remember actually not having to kill this boss because the creepers, not creepers, would actually drop the ore enough, and I would always just go back and try to keep crafting that. So I never actually had to finish fighting the boss for me to get the tissue sample. But anyways, that's enough shenanigans for that. If we look at the background theme for the Crimson, there's bones in the background, which is pretty interesting. There's almost this giant creature or structure. There's bones in the ground that are protruding out of the ground, and some of the other ones, it's not the Crimson where there's jagged spikes. It's more so just death and dead things all over the ground. Also, there's eyeballs. I don't know if that is related to the Eye of Cthulhu, but I don't know. Terraria just seems to really like eyeballs. I mean, I think we all know that Terraria has an eyeball fetish. There's a lot of eyeballs, especially in the ground, that you can find them as well. They're very small detailed. Anyways, that's about it for this video. I just like to review different cool things on Terraria. This is an ongoing series of me just reviewing different shit in this game, and because personally I enjoy this game very greatly. I was told that my voice sounds monotone in my last video, and you know what? You are absolutely correct. It is. Unless when I was a kid, but trust me, I think you'd prefer this to that one. Stick around for the next video, which should be interesting. I think you're going to like it very much. Have a good rest of your day, guys. Like and subscribe if you haven't. Dislike my video if you don't like it. And see you guys soon. See you in the next video. Have a good rest of your day. See ya.